Hello and welcome back to Bulgaria Now. Mainly a weekly show. We have been bi-weekly. Thanks for staying with us. And you can see, those that are watching it on video, if this video comes out, we've got Clive Leviev-Sawyer, Editor-in-Chief of theSophiaGlobe.com. How are you doing?
Very well. Enjoying the change of seasons, the beautiful autumn colours and the promise of winter.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Before we talk about some amusing things going on in the election, some rather perhaps slightly less amusing things going on economically speaking, let's just thank both Sophia Globe and Foreigners and Friends and banskoblog.com for powering Bulgaria Now podcast. And do check out all those sites. I'm going to do a shameless plug for banskoblog.com because we have got the ski season coming up. Starts officially on the 17th of December. May start earlier if there is snow. Let's hope so. I know you're not a skier, but we get excited about these little things. So that's them. I also would like you to check out purse.io. It's a way of you saving 15% or more on Amazon. How about that, folks? So use your Bitcoin in purse.io. I never recommend anything I haven't tried myself. I've used it 5 times now, and it works. It's great. So not only can you benefit from the huge range of goods on Amazon at great prices, but also get that all at a discount. Use Purse.io. Check it out. Okay. Clive, here we are. We're in the, as you say, it's got cold now here in Bulgaria, but we've got election time, and that means it's warming up a bit. And we're getting some fun with that as well, aren't we, Just?
Yes, indeed. We all, shall we say, by now nauseatingly aware that the American election comes up on November the 8th. But 2 days before that is the Bulgarian presidential election, November the 6th.
Which is the most humorous, do you think?
Not even sure it's a question of hubris. It's a question of which is the more bizarre, because they're giving each other pretty good competition for bizarre. Let's talk about the American elections. Too well canvassed topic. Anyway, so November the 6th, Bulgarians go to the first round of voting to elect their new president. Not a figure as powerful as the American president. Pretty much a person who has a few constitutional powers. Anyway, whatever. 21 candidates. But more importantly, the 22nd option, it's not even catch-22, because unlike Americans, they can envy Bulgarians for the fact that you can vote for I don't support anyone.
So just to be clear, you can go into your polling booth and you have all your favourite, not parties, and at the bottom, I assume, is a final box, I don't support anyone.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, this is extraordinary. How's this come about?
Well, earlier this year, Bulgaria's parliament voted to make voting in elections compulsory. Let's just digress a little bit, because there is a really, really terrible penalty if you don't exercise your compulsory vote. You're going to love this. Presidential election, you don't vote. You break the law. Then 5 years' time, there's another presidential election, and you don't vote again. You face a terrible penalty. They take your vote away. I'm serious. And by the way, let's see if this one survives a constitutional court challenge. The Constitution says in very plain Bulgarian, you have an absolute right to vote. So you can't actually legislate a penalty that takes your vote away, even if you don't vote in the first place. This is real catch-22 stuff. It really is. I mean, the people who write this nonsense should get some kind of political Darwin Award for this stuff. Anyway, so...
Do we know any of the people who write this nonsense, or are they too embarrassed to put their head above the parapet?
I think that there might be running into a bit of a problem, because in the excise provisions in next year's budget, the prices of excise and cigarettes will go up, which means that the price of cigarettes will go up. And I don't know what they're going to buy to be writing their laws on the back of, because they all appear to be done on the back of ciggy packets.
Oh, dear.
So just to go on a little bit with I don't support anyone, we had about the first of the more reliable polls in this country, outfit called Alpha Research, pretty good track record, especially compared to many of the others. And they showed one particular candidate in the lead and another candidate trailing by about 9 points or something like that, and then another candidate behind that, and so on down through the 21. In fact, of the 21, 11 had such insignificant support that they didn't rate at all. However, in third place was I don't support anyone. Now, we had some interesting stuff. The first version of this law said I don't support anyone would be counted towards voter turnout, but would not be counted towards the result. This led to a certain degree of controversy, and yesterday, Thursday, October the 26th, they voted second reading amendments which now say that it will count towards the result. The question that's not clear in my mind, and if it's not clear in my mind, I don't think it's very much clear in anybody's mind, is what happens if I don't support anyone wins? What happens if we go to a second round and I don't support anyone is in the second round?
Which it could well be, couldn't it?
It could well be. I think, there's if it showed by this poll, self-funded by Alpha Research, completely independent, done among a sample of about 1,000 Bulgarians, which actually in this country is a very good representative sample throughout a whole bunch of cities and towns. But it showed up as 1 in 10 Bulgarians was willing to vote for I don't support anyone. I could well see this number go up.
Particularly as this gets more and more publicity in the popular media and people talk about it down the local pub, cafe, etc. I mean, it's a good protest vote, is it not?
Indeed. A lot of the Bulgarian politicians refer to it directly as the protest vote. And one could possibly see, I mean, I haven't seen all of the election video clips, I haven't watched all of the rallies so far, but I think the votes, the efforts to try to get people to be encouraged to vote for a particular candidate could well perhaps work out as I don't support anyone. In fact, I don't know if it wouldn't be a good idea, perhaps next election, have a formal campaign, have some posters, perhaps some blank ones, and you could actually set up a committee to run the election campaign for no one.
So there could be an empty seat there running the government.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's something to be said for this. I mean, the president of Bulgaria has a term of 5 years, and it could be rather surreal. You could save a salary for 5 years, for example. I mean, that wouldn't do any harm. The president takes about plus minus 3,000 leva a month. That's about €1,500. Multiply that by 5 years, and that's a bit of a salary saving for President I don't support anyone.
And that's probably the least of the expenses.
Yes, indeed, compared to some of the other things.
Okay, so I don't know what to say about this. This is just a really amazing story that's sort of popped out of almost nowhere. And I think it's going to go on and on.
Well, Bulgaria is not really, shall we say, a global trendsetter with things, but, Lance, you're British. Can you imagine British elections where you have I don't support anyone? I mean, you've got about 600 constituencies in the Commons. Mm-hmm. Think again of the potential. You could replace Theresa May with no one and see if it would make a difference. You could have cabinet meetings with no one present. And the House of Commons, nice empty space, some 600 empty green seats.
Some would actually say that would be a good thing, but someone needs to run the country. Well, I believe someone needs to be in charge. But okay, gosh, I mean, I don't know where this is going to go. I mean, why does Bulgaria come up with this crummy legislation? I mean, particularly, winding the question back, why have they decided to have compulsory voting? That's the first question. And secondly, have they not introduced some rather interesting new rules to try and stop a certain party getting votes from expat Bulgarians living in other countries? Two questions there, sorry.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's start with the polling stations abroad. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
So, yes, there's a certain party in this country, with little breakaway party as well, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, historically supported and led in the main by Bulgarians of Turkish ethnicity. And now the ultra-nationalists, the far right, whatever you want to call them, they have somewhat of a track record. This is their bête noire. This is the party they love to hate. So because they have a deal with the government, they're part of the governing coalition, they got support in February this year to pass a law saying that you couldn't have more than 35 polling stations in any one foreign country. It was very clearly directed against the electorate in Turkey. And this was passed in February, April, the months went by, and eventually Bulgarian expatriates abroad, got rather cheesed off about this, because in places like the UK, for example, where you do have a lot of Bulgarian expatriates, it's hardly practical to have only 35 polling stations. They came up with a version where you would have a grand total of something like 1 polling station in London, which is quite obviously vastly impractical. And the limitations applying in other countries. And, for example, you have people living quite far from the polling station. They'd have to be travelling the whole of Sunday. Maybe they wouldn't get there. Certainly there would be large queues, and their argument was this is effectively unconstitutional. So the ruling party, in the face of all of this unhappiness, said, all right, we will remove these limits. At which point the nationalists then said, well, if you do, and you unbar the way to people in Turkey to vote, we will walk out of the government coalition, the government will collapse, and then we'll be having parliamentary elections. So they came up with this compromise whereby they will remove the limit in the European Union countries and keep it in place for non-EU. Now, already that same party, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, is saying this is unconstitutional, and one must think they have a certain point, because on what basis can you divide voting rights according to whether or not a Bulgarian is living in an EU country? And by the way, something that, I've thought about, apparently the Bulgarian expatriates there haven't thought about so much, is 3 countries where you have the largest number of polling stations without a limit: Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States, which is, to state the blindingly obvious, the United States is not an EU country, so the limit stays in place. Let's see how this one works out on November the 6th and November the 13th.
Has there been an outcry from Bulgarian expats in the US?
Well, they have been on social networks. They've been posting things on YouTube. They weren't as active earlier this year. The Bulgarians in London, they had protests outside the embassy and so forth. But certainly the ones in the United States turned up being interviewed on television and so forth and saying, this is not actually very, very nice. Just we being penalized living in the US, that we can't exercise our vote.
Not good. We're going to come on to another news story in a second, but let's just take a small, tiny break just to talk about something that some of our listeners and readers of SofiaGlobe.com and foreignersandfriends.com and banskablog.com would have seen, which is this Bulgarian Independent Media Alliance. And it's something only just kind of been an idea we've put together, whereby we wanted to collaborate and produce good content together. And we'd kind of informally been doing it, and Clive and I have been informally doing it for 2 years now on these podcasts and on articles. I've written a few articles for Sofia Globe and so on. So the idea is that this media has a foundation of collaboration between us, helps us get and think of good content, and generally helps support ourselves, because we're small operations. But hopefully it will grow into something more, and maybe there'll be other media there. But I think it's the foundation of some media standards that particularly drew me to the concept of this Independent Media Alliance. And I just wanted to ask you just to say a few words about the editorial charter that I think we've all now adopted.
Well, I think one of the absolute most important things about the Bulgarian Independent Media Alliance and our
what's the name of the cat?
Felix.
Felix the cat. Well, that's a good name.
Yeah.
I usually get bitten by cats. Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah, he's not above a bit of biting and scratching.
Okay.
Right after that cameo appearance by the cat. Okay, to be serious. Bulgarian Independent Media Alliance, I think for me, really the big thing is that word independence. You and I, Emmanuel, over at Foreigners and Friends, we own our own shows. We are completely independent. There's nobody standing behind us, as they say in Bulgaria, in terms of some political interests or some commercial interest. There's no, secret conglomerate that's controlling us and telling us what to do, not what to do. We're completely free in that sense. And I think it's very important for everybody to know that. That's really what sets us apart from so much of what is presented as media content in this country, in and about Bulgaria. That to me, that's the hallmark. It's that word, independent.
Okay, great. And then there's some other things we do where there is any financial interest or gifts or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. We
disclose everything. And so I think this is a very exciting thing. If you do enjoy, sorry for the shameless plug for the BEMA, as we call it, Bulgarian Independent Media Alliance, is that if you spread the word, then people will be getting an independent view. And Felix the cat is not biting me yet. Come on, Lance, get my act together. I'm meant to be professional. Okay, so
the other thing I think, sorry to interrupt,
sure,
to underline about BEMA is the audience that it brings together.
Yes.
We have together, as Bansko Blog, as Bulgaria NOW, Sofia Globe, Foreigners and Friends, we have very, very impressive audience numbers as a combined collective. Individually we've been growing for a long time, but now we're actually standing together. And what we're offering people is, if we're talking about people who'd like to come along and support us through advertising and sponsorships, we are giving them an audience which is across different platforms. There's a degree of overlap, obviously, because there are people similarly interested in us, but also we bring different audiences in different ways into this collective package.
Good point. And we looked at the stats, and we're on a run rate for over 900,000 unique listeners and readers per year. Mm-hmm. So impressive numbers.
Big numbers.
Pat on back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and of course, don't forget the podcasts, and if this works as a video, to share those, because this is a really nice way to get to know what's going on in Bulgaria while you're driving your car or walking the dog, or I was going to say walking the cat, but you don't walk cats. But, So, okay, let's move on quickly to some other stuff that's been going on. We're going to talk about an interesting fact about doing business in anywhere in the world, and Bulgaria's ranking has been just announced. It's not great news, is it?
It was disappointing, because in every other respect, Bulgaria is showing good numbers. Unemployment is down. Inflation is, shall we say, producing a consistent performance. The business climate measures are reasonably good. So that's all the positive side. However, the World Bank came out with a very serious annual report yesterday called Doing Business 2017. Very disappointing to see that Bulgaria actually dropped 2 places in the rankings out of 190 countries, coming in at only 39th. Not very nice. That it's dropped in a couple of criteria. People can find the report on the internet. It's well worth reading. It's a very serious report done by the World Bank. It assesses any number of criteria, the bureaucracy, paying tax, getting contracts enforced, cross-border business, that kind of thing. There's a long set of criteria. It's a serious report. So to see Bulgaria going down by 2 places, but also the one country in the region that placed in the top 10 at 10th is the Republic of Macedonia.
So this is unbelievable news, isn't it? I mean, who would have thought that Macedonia, a country that most people in the world could not get even close to pinpointing on a map, is actually ahead of Bulgaria, which again is a country many people can't pinpoint on a map, but there we go, it's a little bit better known. And I in a way, I'm not surprised, because this word judicial reform has been around for an awful long time here in Bulgaria. And from what I understand from people in business and in general, from people trying to get things fixed, it hasn't happened. And then the bureaucracy level, I know everyone loves that word, that doesn't seem to have happened. Why don't we just stop talking and let Felix the cat do the show? Yeah. I'm not surprised, actually. I'm disappointed, because often the headline news is pretty positive, I guess, that there's a low 10% tax rate. Everyone knows that. But if it's harder to do business, then it's really not worth that tax break, some would say.
Yes, indeed. Look, to talk about another report that comes out regularly, that's the European Commission's Cooperation Verification Mechanism report. And time and again, every year, it just talks about judicial reform, which is what it's about. And it talks about, we see evidence of political will, or we don't see much evidence of political will. And then they come out with all these recommendations. Everybody gets terribly excited for about 24 hours. We have all kinds of hand-on-heart promises. And then effectively nothing happens. Even in this presidential election, which, we have campaigns about everything and nothing, frankly. We have presidential candidates saying, I will push judicial reform, which oddly enough, because the president does not run the country, is largely a nonsense, because what is it that they're going to do? So it really is, it's the big unicorn. It is much spoken of and not really seen. And it's so fundamental. It's so fundamental. Governments, succession of governments do all kinds of populist things. They want to grab their headlines. Yesterday, Lance, the current government, it's not the only one that's done this, voted 50 million leva to give Bulgaria's pensioners who get paid less than 300 leva a month a Christmas bonus of 40 leva. Big fat hairy deal. So they're all going to get 20 euro around about Christmas Day. It's a quick, easy thing to do. Judicial reform, much more complex. But if you want to change people's lives, including those pensioners' lives, they're earning less than 300 leva a month, do the fundamental reform. Don't just toss out some token cash.
Well, you're talking of reforms, but you must tell listeners and viewers the almost, I don't know what the right word is, but nonsensical idea they had to boost trade in Bulgaria. Go on. Tell everyone about this wonderful idea they had, which was to do with buying local produce.
Oh, yes. This one is also, the populists like it. It was tried by one of the socialist governments in the past. It pops up again every now and then. They came up with ideas to force supermarkets to push Bulgarian goods, to only stock Bulgarian goods or to give them special prices and so forth. Now, look, even if there was no European Union with its own rules about free market in goods and services, there's the WTO, there are all kinds of international treaties and agreements, and simply the laws of the free market. If nothing of all of that existed. So a complete and utter nonsense. Again, trying for cheap popular stuff, pushing Bulgarian apples is somehow going to wonderfully help the country. It's simply not. It's only going to get the country into trouble. And there's no reason to try to manipulate a consumer market, because after all, wasn't that kind of thing tried under communism in the 20th century? Plenty of lessons to be learned from that. Apparently people are really bad at learning lessons of history.
They do seem to be. The command economy, really, that comes from, and been totally discredited. But even unbelievable. I'm quite convinced these people have never worked in the private sector to come up with such a suggestion. Don't understand trade, nor indeed law, nor indeed the EU, it seems. Dear me. Okay, but there is some positives. The positives being that Bulgarians abroad are sending their money home at ever bigger numbers. The FDI is remaining reasonably high, and a lot of that foreign direct investment is actually Bulgarians sending the money home. And I think that within the report, something that was highlighted that Bulgaria really needs to look at is building a big base of medium-sized businesses, not just one-man bands, one or two people, but properly competitive medium-sized businesses. And this is the thing that there's big businesses here, and there's lots of very small businesses.
True.
And there's nothing in between, virtually nothing. It's almost unbelievable how little there is in between, actually. And and it's quite clear that obviously this is probably a product of mismanagement and all sorts of things, poor government or whatever. But it really, medium term, it's something the country, I think, needs to really address. and put some focus on getting a greater number of medium-sized businesses, i.e. allow those small businesses to grow.
Mm-hmm. It requires a certain degree of vision, determination, some kind of, real proper action plan, couple of points about how you actually get there doing that. And it's a vision that's completely lacking at this point, unfortunately. But it would be nice.
It would be nice. That said, there's lots of positives. In a show coming up pretty soon, I'll be talking to some people who've come over here to run their business, base their business here, and increasing numbers of people are doing this. And I think that there is some great positives. I tend to see the foreigners coming in here doing things. Maybe that's just because they're come up on the radar more. But for whatever reason, there is some positive news. Clive, anything else you'd like to round up for this week?
In terms of news out of this country, well, another very funny one that came up was the Prime Minister said yesterday that he wants the State Agency for National Security and the Interior Ministry to investigate all the privatisations of the past 25 years. Now, again, this is, to use the rugby expression, shall we say, kicking for touch. To me, it sounds like something you would practically have to set up a new body entirely to investigate those things. I'm quite sure if you did start asking a lot of people about what happened, when, who did what, and how things were decided, they would all suddenly have a terrible case of amnesia. To say nothing of the fact that there would be a couple of people who, it was 25 years ago, they're probably no longer with us for one reason or another. And he got his headline out of that, but we didn't hear any kind of time frame, so perhaps we can meet at this time and place in 25 years' time and see how this investigation's coming along.
We've got to laugh on that one. That certainly won't produce any results. I mean, that's a 99.9% certainty, I think, on that one. Okay, so that's the news. We've run out of time. I'd just like to thank you so much for listening and watching. This is the first time we've tried to video this. If this works, then great. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry. I'd like to thank that the phone is going. Clive, do you want to get that?
Yeah.
Yep, Clive's got to go. I'd just like to thank you for watching, listening. If you do like the show, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down if you can. Or leave a comment. That would be great. Let us know what you want to see. Let us know if you've got any questions. And once again, I'd like to just focus you to save money on Amazon. Use the purse.io affiliate link. By using that, you don't compromise any of the money you may save. You will just help the show go on. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time, and bye for now.